So if you are here, make sure you have some materials. Another reminder for like little bits of paper. You can grab like old newspaper or some old mail. You can, some torn pieces of paper around you is great. Old magazines work. You do not need glue. You do not need tape. You need a journal. You need a writing utensil and grab some water. Stay hydrated. And I think we're ready to go. Jessa, you ready?
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Oh my gosh. I am Mariah Rankine-Landers.
And I'm Jessa, Brie Moreno.
And we are Studio Pathways. We have been working in education basically all my life. Jessa, how about you?
Yeah, I have the opposite trajectory as Mariah, where I started as an artist and became an educator, and Mariah identifies. Should we do some descriptors, Mariah?
Yeah, please.
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You go.
Okay, so we're going to, in true collaborative fashion, describe one another to you all today. So if you're listening to us, you may notice our voices are remarkably similar. This is because we both hail from the Central Valley of California. And I see that some people are seeing no sound. Is that true, that we have no sound?
No sound.
Some people have sound. Some people can hear. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so it looks like it's working now.
All right, great.
So let me see. So Mariah is a light-skinned Black woman. She has, today she has on a black shirt that I hear she got in Copenhagen. And she loves it because it has pockets.
It's a dress.
It's a dress, okay. She has big, beautiful, short, curly hair and is wearing gold earrings that are hoops and has a gray background and also a plant that I know she loves that's peeking out in the corner. Yeah.
Great. And Jessa Brie Moreno is my co-founder of Studio Pathways, and she is a white woman, also hailing from the Central Valley. We're both from Merced and Turlock and Chico and Sacramento, all those places. And she is wearing a cream-colored sweater-like V-neck shirt, long sleeves, and she has long brown hair that is coming forward over her shoulders right now. And she's also sitting in front of a panel that is made out of wood that was made by her stepfather, who is also an artist. And she also has a plant nearby. Yeah. So we're so pleased to be here with you today. Again, we are longtime educators. I come by way of a lineage of teachers on my mother's side. And so actually met Jessa when her daughter was in my kindergarten class. Oh, yay, years ago. This child is now in college. And so we started working together at Alameda County Office of Education, where we were leading the Integrated Learning Specialist Program and leading the work of school transformation through the arts. And so now we're taking a larger approach to our work and supporting schools, teachers, leaders, and learning organizations nationally. And so it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. A little bit more about us. So we consider ourselves cultural strategists. We lead with this idea of pedagogy as cultural strategy. One of my favorite words, Jessa's favorite word, is praxis, theory and practice in action. We are culturally responsive teaching and learning through the arts leaders, and we do a lot of social emotional development because that's what the arts do. They just support us to be beautiful, holistic people in the world. And you can follow us at Studio Pathways. A little bit about our framework. So we have this frame that it's a methodology of practice that really is about the mindset of a studio pathway. So entering into studio form where you activate the mind, the habits and qualities of the mind to think expansively like an artist. We use the role of creative inquiry to approach the world, to learn deeper about the world around us. And then we really support this idea of reconciliation through a reckoning process. So we always invite our learners and our audiences to consider how we might reckon. And that's what today is going to be about, is the process of breaking patterns as a reckoning way to build towards a reconciliatory, bright future. And then we always include the artistic research, which again, you'll get a piece of today, is what does that mean to be in dialogue with the world around us and use the arts to understand. And then our whole goal of what we do is this idea of a liberatory learning outcome. So we deeply believe in this idea of expansively enjoying the world around us and being free to be engaged with the world, free thinkers, critical thinkers, love-based thinkers, but really, having the value around moving education towards the goal of liberation. Jessa, would you add some thinking there?
No, that was beautiful. Thank you, Mariah.
Great. For our time together, we're going to jump into some conocimiento practice. We're going to actually hear from the artist that inspired this entire workshop. I'm very excited to introduce to you Adia Millett in a moment. And then we're going to use this work of this idea of narrative intelligence to process this idea of breaking patterns and get into some pattern intelligence work. And then we'll have some reflection time together. All right, are you ready? All right, well, the kindergarten teacher is going to come out in me. I just want to warn you, so sorry. It's always going to be there. All right, we're going to get you set up with Padlet. If you are familiar with Padlet, this will be a place where we can document our learning together, so you can share your artistry that you make today. You can share your thoughts. And all you need to do is open up your phone and take a photo, or just open up your photo app and hold it up to the screen. And that will direct you to Padlet. And also, Jessa will put the link in so you can just get that link and head right over to Padlet. And let me tell you, if this is just not your jam, it's too much, just don't worry about it. We just want it to be an option for you to have a place to document and make your learning visible. I'll hold this up for 3 more seconds. Ready? All right, Jessa, take us into conocimiento. So this is just a beautiful practice. I'll leave it up to you, Jessa.
Awesome. So conocimiento practice is something maybe many of you are familiar with. It is the work of Gloria Anzaldua to consider as we come together, practicing opening to higher levels of consciousness, right? Basically that the goal of coming together in a learning experience is to gather our collective wisdom and build upon it. And that this has to include our cultural ways of knowing, our emotional ways of knowing, our embodied ways of knowing, all of the ways of knowing we come into this world with, and our experiences along the way. So this is expanding the notion of learning into a space of wisdom development collectively as the goal. This comes to us by way of Dr. Shakti Butler, who's worked with Othering and Belonging for many years. And we're happy to share this with you. So at this time, we're just going to invite you to do a practice which we call alter space. We use both versions of spelling of that word. So whichever one speaks to you, you can alter space by changing it with an ER, or if you wish, you can alter space by thinking of it as a spiritual practice, up to you. So at this time, we're just going to invite you to look around you and find an object, if you have one accessible to you, that brings you, that feels life-affirming, or healing. That might just be the water next to you. Could be a plant, an object. Look around your space and locate something that is life-affirming. Mariah, do you have something near you? Beautiful. And as you bring that near you, if possible, just invite you to take a look at it, consider it deeply, consider it as maybe an object, maybe it's a being. And think about what kind of healing this object offers you. How is this object life affirming to you in this moment? And if you could name a certain quality it has, what would that quality be? What is the quality of healing or life affirming nature of this that it brings you in this moment? And maybe on one of your scraps of paper that you brought along today, go ahead and write anything that comes to mind. I'm seeing a plant that is a succulent that survives with very little water. And so that's a life-affirming quality, that it has not necessarily resilience, which is not a term I totally love, because that implies there's maybe been oppression or harm that someone has to handle, but instead the ability to thrive in any atmosphere. Just take a couple more moments. And if you wish to add to the chat, we'd love to hear some of these for you as you consider how this quality is a quality you also carry inside you, and how this quality might serve you as we work together today in the breaking of patterns, which is not an easy task, and the creation of new ones. I see from Holly complexity, authenticity, powerful, expansive, hope and beauty, childhood wonder, hopeful, being of service from a place of joy, smooth and strong, whimsy, warmth, community, steadiness, enduring and strong, brightness, shedding, continuous growth, connected, being seen by others, love and laughter, beautiful mother-daughter, colorful brightness, energy and groundedness, movement, ancestral. Yes, yes, in process, life affirming happening over here in the chat. Protection and new light, sustenance and warmth. The plant breathes out as I breathe in. Comfort, forgiveness. Thank you. It is an honor to be in community with you all. Mariah?
For our time together, we are asking this question: what patterns do we need to break and create in order to bridge to belonging? So, as mentioned in our methodology and our framework, we talk about the role of creative inquiry. So, this is our inquiry for today. And I invite you to start thinking about some of those patterns now that are maybe in your life, maybe they're around you, that you're noticing that need breaking in some way or need a recreation stance. So, one of the things about our work is that we are so moved by the role of the arts in this world, and particularly the role of the artist is such a powerful way to learn and discover and enhance our life. And I was on a trip to Los Angeles in 2019 and was at the California African American Museum, where I saw the exhibit of Adia Millet, and the exhibit was called Breaking Patterns. And so when I walked inside, I was immediately just really taken with her use of dual tone colors and geometry, the geometrics, and really most taken with her inquiry, the inquiry that she was really putting out forward in dynamic ways. And it moved me so much that in that moment of inside of her in the art, I was making the connections around education. So thinking about like education has so many patterns to break. and how can we amplify this idea of breaking patterns and support educators and learning orgs to move through the patterns that they are established in. I really think a lot about this path for healing and reimagining education involves like a really critical but gentle look at our personal habits and our personal patterns and also the external ones around us. I think we really need to be a part of looking at the acknowledging the patterns around us, understanding them, and then creating new ones in their place. And so I'd like to bring in Adia to speak to her work and her process and whatever she'd like to add. To bring to the stage Adia Millet.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
I think
Great. Wow, this is so exciting. I realized as I saw the comments coming up and listening to you to speak that I kind of got emotional. And probably the main reason is because the people who are here are on a path that I think more people on this planet need to be on. And so it's just really inspiring to see the love that and the work that you guys are doing and that the people here are doing. As far what is it? I'm going to start by saying something about myself. Would you want me to do that? Um, let's see. I'm in my studio, which is where I live and work, and I in the last couple of years have had to start wearing reading glasses, which seems to be a product of being in your 40s. And um, I am looking out at a bunch of plants that are by my window that are my inspiration and my reminder of both life and of death, two topics that I care about deeply. As in terms of talking about my work, I use a lot of different mediums. I think that the show that Mariah saw in LA at CAM, Breaking Patterns, was kind of this accumulation of all the different mediums and the kind of foundation for where that work developed, which is definitely around this idea that who we are, our identities, are this beautiful, have this beautiful parallel to our creativity and to our existence in the world. So for me, I think that kind of being able to take apart parts of who we think we are and cut them apart and put them back together and create something new is the foundation um, for a lot of the work that I do. You can kind of see some stuff in the background there that I'm working on right now, some paintings and some textile. As soon as you ask that question, the first question that you ask about patterns that we want to break, I don't know if I should say what I thought because I know everyone else is going to start to go into this, but the first thing that came to my mind was assumptions. Really thinking about the assumptions that I make about other people and assumptions I make that I assume people have about me, and just thinking about, wow, how do I visualize that? What does the image look like behind that? So thank you for getting me to kind of re-ask that question. I think it's such a one that we can never ask ourselves enough.
I agree, and I'm also completely moved right now because I love your work so much, and have been so moved, and you've helped me to grow because sitting with this inquiry has done so much for my own healing. Um, so thank you so much for your mind and the way that you've been thinking about the art. Um, I want to let folks know that we actually got together and collaborated to kind of put this together for teachers, and that also has been very exciting to share, and just so much gratitude for you.
Thank you.
So, Adia, I want to invite people to go back to something you mentioned, which was this idea that you have about having an idea and then taking it apart. And so that's what we're going to invite everyone here to do today, is to consider a pattern in your life that needs breaking. So we're just going to sit with that question for a minute. And Adia, you set us off with a great example of assumptions. And one thing you mentioned, so Adia and I, we all did a video together too. And in your video, you talk about how you can represent the pattern that you want to break. And so I'm going to have folks start to make a representation with the bits of paper that we asked you to come with, or if you want to draw, I think drawing is fine too. So we'll just pause for a minute and get ready for a lot of pausing, because we're going to enter into the realm of creation and reflection. And that requires time. So we are wanting to surface a pattern in your life that you are working on breaking, or that you want to break. This can be an established pattern that you're working on personally, or it can be an established pattern held at your organization, your work, wherever you lead in life. Jessa, do you have another example of a pattern that you've been working on?
Yes. So the one I'm going to work on today is a pattern of interrupting. It has some cultural context in my family that shows appreciation, interest, affection, and yet that's not necessarily how it lands in the world. And it has the opposite of the opposite impact of my desired intent. So I would like to play around with that pattern today.
So as you identify the pattern that you want to break, you can start to put that into an image form. So Adia, what might you do for this idea of assumption? How might you put that into a image?
That's a great question. I had fabric instead of paper, and some of the fabric that I brought, one is from a dress that I cut apart, and another one is actually a dress too, kind of like a Dutch wax African textile. And so I just was like, okay, how do I connect this to my assumptions? And was thinking about assumptions that I have made about people who wear dresses, women, or people who identify as female often, but that's not always the case. So even in me telling you this, I hear myself making assumptions. So just even the fabric itself kind of is layered with the assumptions that I make. And so now thinking about how can I piece that together? How can I create an image? Or for me, a lot of times actually creating an abstraction that can kind of just have a little reference to something that we represent is always a balance for me. I'm trying to determine, should I make this really look realistic so that I can assume that the people are going to project, that this looks like the shape of a house, for example, or do I want to make it just almost look like that so that I'm starting to expand what the notions are or the things we want to project. So I'm kind of sharing my process more than actually sharing what I'm going to put together. I haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, fantastic. I was working with one earlier about my coffee habit. So I was wanting to break my pattern of drinking too much coffee in the morning. And so I was playing around with the image of a coffee cup. And then I had this breakthrough, which I will share later. I'll share the breakthrough later, but that's the whole point. Never too much coffee. Kimberly, you are right. I have now taken my coffee as my ritual, and I love it, but I'm doing less of it. So that's my breakthrough. All right. So I think we've all got a pattern. How do we all have a pattern? All right. So now we're going to move forward into the work of narrative intelligence. So narrative intelligence comes from, I've structured it around the work of Erica Williams Simon, who wrote the book You Deserve the Truth. And she uses the structure of narrative intelligence to support the ways that Black women show up in the world. So I recommend the book, and we've adapted some of her questions for this work of identifying the patterns that we are working with. So the first part is to create a pattern. I'm going to go back to screen share. Erica Williams Simon is the author of the book, You Deserve the Truth. And you will be seeing Adia's work throughout these slides too. So now that you have maybe the starting points of a pattern that you're working with, maybe you've drawn it out, it might be incomplete, that is fine, you can still work on it. But I would like you to consider these questions as we move along. And you can turn towards your journal, or you can still stay in the making mode. I see Adia and Jessa still making. So you can think about these questions as you're still making. It's really whatever is supportive to you. So what pattern do you want to break? We've just asked that question. Now ask yourself, where did you learn this pattern? Where did you learn this pattern? What beliefs do you have about this pattern? We all have belief systems. What beliefs do you have about this pattern? And then where in your life have you seen this pattern? So I'll pause and give us a couple of minutes of thinking and writing time. Aisha says, no idea where I learned it. That's often very true. We often don't know where we learn it, which is why this structure of narrative intelligence helps us to kind of dig into our brain, because our brain is a pattern-seeking machine. And so we have gathered all of these ideas over time based off of everything that has come into our realm of being, the TV shows we watch, the things we read as a child, the sound of your mother's voice, the trees outside your front door. All of those things really apply to how your brain has made sense of the world and built patterns. So just take this as a time to kind of think through. Yeah, where might you have learned this pattern? Great. So these are the identification questions here, this first set and the next set. These are also identification questions. So this is the first part of the structure of narrative intelligence. So now I want you to think through, what are your beliefs, fears, assumptions, and certainties about the pattern? What are they based on? What premise are they based on? So your beliefs, fears, assumptions, and certainties about this pattern are based on what premise? So that might be something like, maybe it's based on a idea of gender. So Adia, you were talking about gender and dresses. So that's based off of a premise of dichotomy of gender. And so now we're in a really expansive way of thinking about how we show up. Do you have any thoughts around premise, Adia?
So the premise around, can you ask me in another way?
Mm-hmm. So this question is really asking what's foundational to your beliefs, your fears, and your assumptions about the pattern. So these might be the larger ideological or even religious ideas that we may have been uh, grown in and through. Old adages that our parents may have, grandparents may have shared with us.
Mhm. I mean, well, with the idea of assumption, there's this. It was how I gained information, or how what I thought was true. So it was used to help me understand.
Mm.
But as I was thinking about that, about giving me information and understanding, I was thinking that in fact it was actually helping me to misunderstand
Mm.
and to be misinformed at
Mm.
the same time.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
But in terms of where it came from, I don't know where it doesn't come from. I feel like we're taught to create categories and to define things, and in that process, it's very easy to make assumptions.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I don't know where it doesn't come from. I would say this is maybe part of the way that the unseen or the invisible parts of culture, like the idea around space, like personal space, is an aspect of culture that changes from, around the world. People have different ideas about personal space. And so a lot of times when we're thinking foundationally, we don't know because it's just so automatic in us. We've grown in and through it. It's like the air around us. So let me continue and ask you these questions. What else is true around this pattern? So you're really just digging deeper. And finally, a more a fun question is, what if you were writing a children's book about this topic, about your pattern? What would the moral of the pattern be? So we'll spend a few minutes here. That's my timer. I'm looking at the chat and I'm so moved by all that you're sharing. And I'm reminded that, um, James Baldwin talks about the way that we hold multitudes, that we are multitudinal beings. And I think about how there's a lot of heavy that I see in the chat, and there's a lot of heavy around this conference, and there's a lot of heavy in the world. And how is it that we are able to be in so much complexity and practice complexity? And, the fact that we only use 11% of our brains, to me, that is multitude. Like we are expansive in our minds, and we have room to hold each other through all of this heavy. And I just want to say thank you for sharing so profoundly in the chat with us, your thinking as we move along. We're going to move into understanding questions. So these help us understand more about the pattern. So now I want us to reflect on, does this pattern serve you? Is it serving your values? Does participating in the pattern, how does it make you feel more often than not? And can you see any harm that it has caused you? Has it brought you closer to the person that you want to be? And has it brought you closer to the life you want to create and the world you want to live in? Adia, I'm looking at the image that is below, and it's your piece about, it's the medicine wheel, which I just love that it sits there as a reminder of who we want to be and how we want to live in the world.
Yeah, that piece is one of my favorites. It's, it's really just a collection of fabrics and me thinking about the four directions, thinking about the elements, thinking about the different times of our life, from being an infant to being an ancestor. Um, in relationship to the patterns, I think that there's something about putting these pieces that may not necessarily seem like they go together, like the army camouflage with the African textile with upholstery fabric, and what happens when these parts come together.
Mm.
Um, and I also just want to acknowledge all these things that everyone is sharing. It is vulnerable to share what your patterns are. And so every time I read one, I'm like, yes. And every time I read one, it makes me feel the connection that we all have, I think that's kind of in going back to mine around assumptions. I think the big thing that would be the moral in the story would be that without the assumptions, we are led to curiosity and eventually to connection.
Mm. We should write that book, Adia.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, we're going to spend, let's spend at least another minute with these questions.
As we move forward, I'm just noticing in the chat, I want to respond a little bit of to start to extend to think about how some of these personal patterns have a systemic or structural origin to them, and how we can begin to, as one of the ways we can begin to move through them, is to do so with great compassion and empathy towards the self, and what we have inherited in terms of beliefs and systems and structures. And so I'm seeing, within these, where are there spaces where this has been a systemic or societal approach that has become internalized, right? And that sometimes there can be some freedom for the self in separating those two things out a bit, and allowing for compassion for the self as we break and move through.
All right. We're going to now switch gears, and I want you to return to your pattern. Just look at it. And we're going to make a new pattern now. So we're going to do some breaking of a pattern, and we're going to create a new one. Before you do anything, I want you to just notice again, just do a temperature check, a feeling check about your pattern, what you've created. Take a photo of it. Stop and use your phone, document it, just take a little photo. Oftentimes with learners in the classroom, they get very attached to the things that they're making, yet they might still need to evolve an idea or expand upon an idea. And so documenting is a good way to support the continuation of the making process while having a reference point to what was. And then what I love about this is we're going to break our pattern, and I want you to do something really specific. I want you to notice how you break your pattern. So you might be the type of artist that wants to just wipe the canvas clean and start again. Or you might be the sort of artist that wants to pick up one little piece at a time and rearrange it. Just notice what feels most important and compelling for you to do to break your pattern, and go ahead and do so, and begin the process of creating a new pattern in its place. So what new pattern do you want to replace this old pattern? How can it shift? I'll spend a few moments making here. All right, our final, oh, I see some surprises in the chat, but our final questions are the creation questions. I do want to read these, however. Surprisingly for me, changing the color of the pattern made a big difference. When I got to choose my own color with a nice pen, it felt like it was transformed. Had to step away for minutes, yes. Oh, could someone tell me? Yes, Jessa, will you catch up our friend here? Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating what you discover when you break the pattern and then you create a new one. This is where the insight always comes for me. And we have folks that have, repeated this process for themselves. And every time they go through this work of breaking a pattern with the art form, they have new insights. And I'm so pleased that that's happening for you now. Our last set of questions, these are the creation questions. How we create new narratives and support new patterns. So what if I created a new pattern, and consider yourself, you just created a new pattern. Now, what if this pattern illuminated who and what you are? What if this pattern could change the course of your life? And what if this pattern had the power to heal? And Nadia, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, but I just see you as a healer yourself, by way of putting this work out into the world and, allowing folks to grapple with it in such a profound way.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that, people who share their creativity are sharing their experiences. And I think that, that vulnerability is what leads um, to healing, you know.
Yeah. Okay. But also, go ahead.
I want to see if I can try the thing, so I can put my thing up there. Do I just take a picture of it, or how does this work?
Yes, you and Tamar would like the QR code. Are you able to access it via link? Or you're on the Padlet?
Yep, I think I got it.
Okay.
So should I put my first pattern and the second? Is that what people are doing?
Yeah. Share both of them. So I was thinking, Nadia, about vulnerability really makes us malleable for a change. Like I just had the idea of like welding, and how, when the metal gets really hot, that's its vulnerable point, and it can flex and bend and do different things. Mm-hmm. Just thinking about how much we really need to get into vulnerability in order to flex and bring about the changes that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think as an artist, there's moments where I want to make things perfect. I want everything to look really clean, and that I make the right color choices. And sometimes the work I think that is the most successful is the one where you can see all the imperfections, where you can see the lack of sturdiness in my hand, or me painting over a color several times. Those messy spots.
Yeah. Those are the best. I like those too. You can see the hand, like you can feel your soul.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take just another few moments here as we come to a close for our session. All right, how we doing? We ready? So let's return to our inquiry question. What patterns do we need to break and create in order to bridge to belonging? And we're going to invite you through the process of a collective poem, which we love to do. And we'd like you to, I'm going to title this Break and Create. I'd like you to enter in your reflections for breaking and creating. So you can think about this question. What is now your emergent thinking towards this idea? What patterns do we need to break and create in order to bridge to belonging? And just I'll hand it to you.
Seeing gratitude in the chat. Yes, the session recordings will be available. And yes, we are so grateful. Also, if you can add to the Padlet your created pattern, your new pattern, we would love to see those now as well. So in the chat, we're going to add any language that came to you during this process. So thank you for all of your love notes and appreciation. And we'll invite you to go back into anything that you wrote down or anything you want to share out so that we can have a collective word poem here on the side. Okay, beautiful. All right, do we know where the beginning is, Mariah? Adia, can we ask something of you since you're here with us? We're gonna. You can say no. We're gonna read this out as a poem. Would you join Mariah and I in doing that?
Sure. What? Oh, all of the things that are said?
Yeah, everything that was just shared here. So we'll start with, let's see, we're going to go back to a time.
This is Metamorphosis was the first one, maybe?
I think so. Yep. So Kimberly at 12:22.
12:22. Oops, I'm almost there.
Yes.
Okay. You want to kick us off, Adia?
And Mariah, if you don't mind, I think the QR code is shared. Thank you. We can go back.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I'll start with Kimberly's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Metamorphosis.
Gather up the pieces to fill whole. Be in pieces together. It's in the breaking that the bridging occurs.
The new emerges from the old. Like an egg, the new breaks out of the shell and grows. It's beautiful.
Create.
Conformity brings the illusion of safety.
To break, sometimes we need help, support, tools, scissors in my case today.
Create.
Having a hard time getting the link to Padlet on my phone or camera QR code would be helpful.
Opening.
Balance.
Build bridges, not walls.
Being whole brings wholeness to the world.
Self-compassion.
Centering self and humanity.
Break.
Create.
Messiness is love.
Create.
Liminal.
Allow imperfection. Don't need to know what the space will be filled with, but just first create the space and see what happens.
We need to change the patterns of the past. Hold close for memory, but flex enough to move past the old to get to the new.
Breaking patterns that exclude.
Compassion.
Body care over body neglect.
Break walls of isolation. Create beams of light.
I am enough.
Break patterns. Hold the line.
Break.
Curiosity and connection.
Create.
Create.
self-compassion.
Rearrange.
My patterns are my bondage, my isolation from others. To break and to rebuild new patterns offers me liberation, freedom, joy, happiness, a realization of my true self. Satnam.
Breaking patterns that other.
The transition is where new selfhood wanders.
Possibilities.
And welcome to freedom to be.
Pink.
Vulnerability is beautiful.
Create.
Courageous conversations.
Belonging to me, to my body.
Extend grace to self, not shame.
Create.
Create softer boundaries that are permeable.
Scaffold vulnerability to break and create.
I learned at the feet of the masters to shield and shove down feelings. Tearing the shields into strips and reweaving them creates an unpredictable, messy pattern in where I have room to breathe.
Don't have to change everything at once. Just moving one piece can shift the whole picture.
Break binary thinking, hard lines. Create expansive circle.
Be vulnerable.
New patterns enable me to be more myself, to myself and to everyone else.
The tactile world.
Create more love.
Create.
Create. Tearing paper with my fingers.
Create more bridging. Bringing into the fold of humanity.
Thank you.
Oh, I think, and we're there. Are there abundance?
I turned it backwards. Nice.
Curiosity and self-love.
And steady and moored in the simple yet transformative belief that I am of deep value exactly as I show up, especially ways that might be identified as mistakes by others. I celebrate mistakes as compassion knocking at my door.
Emergence.
I am powerful and I have a voice, and others will see me when they have the capacity to.
Yay! And this is one of the most beautiful things I've participated in. Thank you so much, Kimberly and Kristen. We thank you so much, everyone, for participating and being with us. Please follow Adia. Please follow Jessa and I at Studio Pathways. Go to our website. You can download lots of things, get started with the work. I'm going to give you a link. You can follow that. It's a little bit, our marketer person did that. So, it's out there for us, but we are going to be vulnerable in sharing that. And Adia, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for your artistry. Thank you
beautiful.
all for being here. Mariah, can I share our exciting news?
Oh yeah, we have news.
So as of this morning, Mariah and I have a book deal. So we are very excited to share with you. It'll be called, we think, Do Your Lessons Love Your Students? And so we're very excited about that. Should be happening in the next, year or two. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you all for sharing so beautifully today.
Bye.
We're back in the afternoon, so if you want to join us for Heirlooms and Accessories and the artwork of Carrie James Marshall. We don't have Carrie James Marshall with us today, like we got to have time with Adia, but please join us back at, is that 3 o'clock, Mariah?
Yes.
Yeah, great. See you all.